So I was just rereading through the latest stimulus bill, specifically the EIDL grant portion, and I found something that I think is going to be really exciting for a lot of people on the income qualification, the low income area qualification for the EIDL grant, for that $10,000 EIDL grant, or the bump up from whenever you received to $10,000. More people will actually be able to fit into this criteria than I previously thought. I haven't seen anyone else talk about this, probably because no one else wanted to actually read the tax law, but it's kind of exciting. There's going to be more people who fit in here, and oh wow, I look like a poodle right now. Anyways, more people are going to be able to fit into this than we previously expected. So I was reading over this stimulus bill, and it says low income community. The term low income community has the meaning given the term in section 45DE of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. So I was thinking, my first thought was just gloss over it. Like, we already know the 20% requirement or the 80% requirement. But I was like, maybe there's other definitions to low income community. And based on that hunch, I was actually absolutely right. So I pulled up this specific section of the law in the Internal Revenue Code, and there's a lot of different groups and areas that qualify as low income communities besides those typical markers. So the typical markers, just to cover those real quick, are at least 20% of the people in your census tract, which is typically defined by a group of people between 1,200 and 8,000 that census data is reported on. You can kind of think of it as like an extended neighborhood. I'll have a website link below where you can look at your specific census tract. It's really easy. You can just scroll in and take a look at that. So either you hit that marker, which is the easiest marker. If you hit that, you're good to go. Or you need to hit 80% of your median family income compared in your census tract compared to the state median family income. And I apologize, in the past, there was a video where I said it was household income. It's family income. It's easy to get those two confused, and they're usually pretty darn similar. So if you have one, if like one qualifies, the other probably does too. They're usually within like 1,000 or two from each other. So your census tract compared to your state median family income. So one additional part here, which I'm sure this part's been mentioned, but you can also compare your census tract's median family income to the metropolitan area's median family income. So let's say you live in a really rich area, but your census tract is relatively poor. You actually will be able to more likely qualify based on living in a metro area that's higher income than an entire state that's lower income. So for example, I'm here in Arizona. Scottsdale is kind of considered like the ritzy area. So if you were to live in a lower income area of Scottsdale, for instance, it seems like you're in a high income area. But if you compare that to the metro as a whole, chances are you would be within that 80% marker, or on the state level within that 80% marker. Now, finding the metropolitan area median household income is kind of tough. The best I can find so far, let me know if you guys have a better method than this, is going to censusreporter.org. And don't worry, there's also like 4 other ways that we can qualify through low income that I found with this method. But before we get into that, you can go to censusreporter.org. Best way I've gotten to figure it out is you type in your city's name followed by metropolitan area. So if I search Houston metropolitan area, it pops up Houston, the Woodland, Sugar Land, Texas metro area, and it gives census data for that area. One issue with this is it actually doesn't have median family income data. It only has median household income data. So it's not perfect, but it can give you a better idea if it's higher or lower than your state. So taking a look at here at the Houston one, it's $69,000 for median household. Let me just see what the Texas census median household is. Yeah, so Texas's median household income is $64,000. That metro area was a few thousand higher. So in that case, there are certain people who will be able to qualify based on the metro area versus their state of Texas area. So I think this is going to be applicable for a lot of people. So you'll have to test metro area versus your census tract if you're right on the line there. Now, the other ones that are more hidden, much more hidden, we have targeted populations, areas not within census tracts, tracts with low populations, modifications for high migration rural communities. Those all have certain qualifications to apply as low-income communities and then make you eligible to either bump up that grant from $1,000 to $10,000 or whatever you received to $10,000, or if you applied before December 27th to get up to $10,000. So that is extremely exciting. So let me just go over these one by one. They were confusing. I had to actually do a lot of research to define these things. So the first one, areas not within census tracts. So it says here, in the case of an area which is not tracted for population census tracts, the equivalent county divisions as defined by the Bureau of Census for purposes of defining poverty areas shall be used for purposes of determining poverty rates and median family income. So counties are broken up into sections for census data. So if you don't have a census tract, which most people do, you will actually just use your county data and then use those same relative 20% poverty rates or 80% compared to the metro area or the state. So that doesn't include a ton more people, but the next one, tracts with low population. A population census tract with a population of less than 2,000 shall be treated as a low-income community for purposes of this section if such tract is within an empowerment zone, the designation of which is under effect under Section 1391, and is contiguous to one or more low-income communities. So what the heck does that mean? Well, an empowerment zone are specific zones designated by the Treasury Department, I believe, to kind of be areas of more focus or areas where there's more funding access. And that doesn't give you much of a definition, but what I did find is there's a map of all the empowerment zones in the United States, and I'll have that linked in the description where you can just scroll in on your area and see if it's part of an empowerment zone. And then it says you must be in an empowerment zone or an enterprise community, either one. This map covers both, and contiguous to one or more other low-income areas. So you need to be touching at least one low-income area in the empowerment zone or the census tract that you're in. So let me just recap that. Your census tract can be within an empowerment zone or an enterprise community, and it doesn't have to be a low-income census tract, but if it's touching a low-income census tract and within an empowerment zone or enterprise community, it counts as a low-income community. So that one's a little bit more involved, but it definitely will make more people included in the low-income area requirement. It's just going to take a little bit of digging on your part to see if your exact area qualifies or not. And then the next group that will also qualify as low-income communities, and I think this one is actually going to include a lot more people, is called the modification of income requirement for census tracts within high migration rural counties. So it says, in the case of population census tracts located within a high migration rural county, paragraph 1BI shall be applied by substituting 85% for 80%. So what the heck does that mean? Basically, a high migration rural county is any county that has shown at least a 10% decrease in population in the 20-year period before the last census data was taken. So defining that even more simply, let's say the last census data that was taken for your census tract was 2015. That would mean your area would qualify as a high migration rural county if the population has decreased from 1995 to 2015 by 10 or more percent. In that case, the 80% rule for median family income compared to the metro area or the state area gets bumped up to 85% of the median family metro income or state income. So an extra 5% of people will be considered in low income communities because of this rule. And I mean, if 5% doesn't sound like a lot, but that is 25% of the people who wouldn't have been eligible under that are now eligible under this 85% rule. And there are many areas that have shrunk in population. I'd be willing to bet there's a lot of areas within California, because so many people have moved out and moved out for years and years and years. I know they've had negative population increases for a while. There's probably people within California who will be able to be applicable to this because of the 85% rule. It says rural communities, but it's actually defined as any community that showed that 10% reduction in the 20-year period before the last census data was collected. Now, I know it's kind of confusing. I'm trying to define these as simply as I possibly can, but I really think that this is going to make thousands and thousands and thousands of more people eligible for the bump up in EIDL grant. Now, also remember, you must show on top of the low income area requirements the 30% deduction in gross receipts. And to do that, you take any 8-week period between March 2nd, 2020 and December 31st, 2021. So that hasn't even happened yet, 2021, in whatever your worst period was, your worst 8-week period in that, you take that divided by your best period from January 1st, 2019 to March 1st, 2020, whatever period had the best revenue or income. You'll divide the low one by the high one, and you want that to be 0.7 or higher, meaning you showed a loss of 30% or more to qualify. So the way that the SBA is administering these is first, the people who applied and received less than $10,000 may be eligible to bump that up to $10,000 if they hit either the low income community requirement or the gross receipts requirement. That's the first group of people who get paid. The second group of people will be the people who applied before December 27th, 2020 and didn't receive any kind of EIDL grant. If they hit those other two income and gross receipt requirements, they will be eligible for up to $10,000. And all we've heard so far from the SBA on their website, on their bulletins, and their emails is addressing Section 331, which is $20 billion to bump up those advances to the people who receive less than $10,000 or the people who haven't received anything yet and they applied by December 27th. Section 332, if we look at the stimulus bill, appears that there's another $40 billion allocated for people who have yet to receive any form of EIDL grant or loan. Like I said, per the website, there are no timelines for this yet, and there's not even any mention of this on the website. So it's kind of concerning. We don't really have a whole lot of information here. I know there's a lot of people arguing that this will absolutely happen, and I hope to see that happen. It's tough, though, because we just don't know the timeline or how the SBA will decide who gets what under this $40 billion portion. But $40 billion is so much money, so there should be more than enough to even give $10,000 to everyone who applies. But only time will tell exactly what happens there. So what I've done to try and get some answers here is I've reached out to all the SBA heads that I know to see if they have any comment on this or if they can provide any information as to what to expect. So I've reached out to the Office of Capital Access. I've reached out to the Office of Disaster Assistance. And I'm not sure when or if I'm going to receive a response because I know it's extremely chaotic there right now. A lot of the heads are being completely swapped under the new Biden administration, but I will absolutely keep you up to date if I receive any notice from my contacts at the SBA. So that's going to do it for today. I hope that this comes as some good news for people who are right on the edge of qualifying. Again, we don't have an exact timeline for when this portal is going to open up. What we do know, though, is the Paycheck Protection Program is wide open. If you can apply for the EIDL grant, chances are you can also get the PPP. And trust me, the PPP is not nearly as scary as it seems like it is. I have other videos on that. You can apply online. It's super easy. There's a link in my description to apply online. If you own a small business, you're a gig worker, you're a contractor, you do any service that's not a W-2 employee, you should apply for the Paycheck Protection Program. You can check that out in the description. So anyways, I would like to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.